Okay, everybody, welcome. I'd like to welcome all of you and to our guests here on the panel today to the Virginia Festival of the Book 2015 and to today's discussion, How We Innovate, Rebels, Science, and Partners. It'll be a broad-ranging discussion. I'll touch on lots of interesting topics. But before we begin, I have a little housekeeping to do, so bear with me for a moment, but this is all quite important. First, let me introduce myself. My name is Sean Carr. I'm on the faculty at the University of Virginia's Darden School of Business, and I'm the executive director of the Batten Institute for Entrepreneurship and Innovation, and I'm proud to say that the Batten Institute is serving as the host of today's panel. I would also ask all of you to silence your cell phones if you would. Silence them, but if you really would love to tweet something out, as Carmen may do any moment now, it's hashtag VABook2015 if you'd like to do that. Supporting the festival. Today, the festival is free of charge, but not free of cost. Please remember to go online and give back or pick up a giving envelope from the information desk at the Omni and support your festival so that it can be sustained for many years to come. I'd also like to ask, and you will be asked, to provide an evaluation of today's session before you leave, if you wouldn't mind. These provide essential feedback and information that will guide the festival, keep it free and open to the public in the future. If today's discussion so inspires you to pick up a book, there are books that will be available for sale after today's conversation. And in a moment, I'll start off with some introductions. I would also like to say a special thank you to the City of Charlottesville for this venue and to Charlottesville's own TV10 for broadcasting the event, which is being broadcast live now and also recorded for later broadcast. As a consequence of that, since this is a recorded event, during the Q&A portion, and there will be plenty of opportunity for all of you to ask questions, I would ask that you pause for a moment. A microphone will be brought to you so that everyone can hear what you have to say, and we'll take it from there. So wait for that. Well, I will begin today by doing some very brief introductions of each of our guests. And then I'll ask each of them in turn to just, say a little bit about their work. So let me begin with Carmen Medina to my left. Carmen Medina is the co-author of Rebels at Work, a handbook for leading change from within. She is a consultant at Deloitte, retired from the Central Intelligence Agency after 32 years, becoming one of the highest-ranking women at the agency. During her career at the CIA, she served as Deputy Director for Intelligence and Director of the Center for the Study of Intelligence. So we'll begin with you, Carmen. Can you say a little bit, give you some time to talk about Rebels at Work?
All right. Well, thank you, Sean, and thank you to the Virginia Festival of the Books, and thank you for an audience, because that's an important part. And about 10 minutes?
About 10 minutes.
Okay, about 10 minutes. So, I used to go to college campuses a lot and talk about working at the CIA, and people would introduce me on occasion and actually say, believe it or not, she actually is a senior official at the CIA. And I took that as a compliment. And the book is a story of lessons that I and Lois Kelly, my co-author, learned about trying to make change inside large organizations. And it started, how did we meet? How do two authors meet? It started when shortly after retiring from CIA, I spoke at a conference in Rhode Island, Business Innovation Factory, about my career at the agency, about being a heretic there. And let me just say that I was a heretic about many things, but the thing that I was most pushing was the fact that the CIA needed to get on board with the digital revolution. I was thinking, this is getting a little out of hand, that we're just sort of not paying attention to it. And so I spoke about being a heretic at the agency, and part of it being, I mentioned being part of a rebel alliance that we had formed. I was not Princess Leia. We had in my mind a Princess Leia, but it wasn't me. And
no braids.
And okay, good. And so
who were you?
I'm thinking about this as I'm talking, going, now I introduced that concept.
We'll take a vote later.
Okay. But anyway, one of the people in the audience was Lois Kelly, the co-author, and she came up to me and she told me later that going home from the conference, she missed her exit to her house. She was just mulling over this so much because she realized, why doesn't anybody help heretics? But the word she used was rebels at work. Why doesn't anybody help them? And my comments were really well received at this conference. One, because I'm an extraordinarily effective speaker, but two, because everybody else at the conference was an entrepreneur. You know, they were building their own company, building their own idea, and I was the only one that talked about, well, how do you make change from within the belly of the beast? And I think that really grabbed people's attention. If I had not met Lois, I certainly would never have written this book. When I left the agency, and in the 5 years since I've been away from the agency, I've come to learn one thing, that many of the things I thought were wrong with the agency were not unique to the agency, and I spent 32 years there. I should have said at the beginning, by the way, that I'm Puerto Rican by birth and Texan by nationality. Went to high school in Texas, love Texas. But my entire work experience in a serious way had been the CIA. And I realized that a lot of the things that I faulted the CIA for were really what I now call large organization disease. So the lessons in the book are of hindsight. Lois and I have little call-out boxes where we tell our individual stories. We found that the easiest way to deal with writing a joint book, and the whole voice of a book, But they're all lessons learned in hindsight. There's an actual theme to the lessons, and I don't actually think we say it in the book. One of the comments advice we got from reviewers when we sent it out to be reviewed was, get to the point, make it short. So we cut it by at least a third, and lots of stuff, like we go, is that still in the book? We don't remember. But one is this concept of sequencing. So when you're an employee in an organization, and this really, I think, applies to knowledge work, where there is no checklist for knowledge work. There's no set way of doing knowledge work. And certainly that applies to innovation. There's no checklist for getting a new idea. The thing that no one helps rebels with is, okay, you've got an idea for doing things differently in your organization. What's the sequence of things you need to do to make sure your idea has a chance of implementation? In what order should you do things? I did things in totally the wrong order. One of the things, really the message of the book and the order that the chapters are in is about the sequence of your career as a rebel at work. So let me just speak very briefly about some of the things in sort of in the order that we think are really important. You gotta get to know your boss. If the idea that you're recommending is an idea that gets away with the one set of skills that she has mastered in her career, the chances that she's going to support your ideas are kind of nil. So get to know your boss and where your boss is coming from. Build a rebel alliance. It's very important for you to have people to talk to who can give you some insight about whether or not your idea is really worthwhile or not. Together, I think, you'll be much more effective. Now, I was just at South by Southwest, and I heard Dan Pink, who's very famous in human capital idea work, talk about recent research that showed, that the effectiveness and the necessity for working together to build support for your idea. That if you work together, you're much more effective than you work alone. So I think that the science is beginning to prove this as well. It's very simple, it's straightforward, but you know what? Not a lot, but some rebels at work can be very arrogant. And in fact, one of the things we talk about in the book is how you can tell if you're a bad rebel or you're a good rebel, right? Wow. So very important to build an alliance. And if you end up with no one supporting you, that really should tell you something. learn the organizational landscape. This is the mistake I made. I would give the big speech about my big reform ideas or write the article, and I did not understand how the organization actually worked. So by giving that talk or writing that article, I had just warned everybody of my intentions, and they were much better bureaucrats than I was, because rebels at work tend not to be very good bureaucrats. They're idea-driven, right? And I would get ambushed at the pass every time. It was like one, if you know Star Wars, one Admiral Akbar moment after another, right? So the way you prevent this is by learning the organizational landscape. We talk about some of the natives of the organizational landscape, like bureaucratic black belts, all right? And we actually tell rebels, befriend bureaucratic black belts. Take them to lunch, interview them. People love to be interviewed. It's very flattering. And ask them, have you seen change, an idea get adopted in this organization? How did that happen? So get smart about the organization. Land the meeting. You know, when you get finally a chance to present your ideas at a meeting, don't take 90% of the time with your PowerPoint slides. In fact, speak for as briefly as you can, which I'm hoping I'm doing now, and leave lots of time for questions, right? Land the meeting. One thing that we have a whole chapter devoted to is conflict. This was very difficult for me. I did not really understand that being an advocate for a different idea was going to be uncomfortable and very difficult and would involve a lot of conflict. One of the phrases that I like to say and we use in the book is consensus is not a decision-making style. Consensus is a way of avoiding decisions, right? If you have consensus, there's no decision to be made. And when you are a rebel at work and you're advancing an idea, you're actually fighting against this sort of trend to, decision by consensus, which, is an oxymoron. And the last thing I'll say, we also have a chapter very close to the end about rebel self-care. Very surprised at how popular this chapter is when we talk to people. In other words, how to take care of yourself. Because when you're a rebel at work, there's a lot of stress at work, and it's going to be very difficult for you to deal with all the other things that are going on in your life. And there's always other things going on in your life, right? And so you've got to learn to recognize the signals of when you're in danger as a rebel at work. And the way we summarize all of that is when people describe you, you don't recognize the person that they're talking about, that's when you need to take a sabbatical from that campaign, because you need to heal yourself. I'm stopping right there.
Well, that's great. Thank you very much. That was terrific. Well, thanks. We'll be coming back to this part of the conversation in a moment. I'd now like to turn to my good friend and colleague, Ed Hess. Ed Hess is the author of Learn or Die, Using Science to Build a Leading-Edge Learning Organization. He is a professor of business administration and a Batten executive in residence at the Darden Graduate School of Business. He is the author of 11 books, and his research has been featured in 350 media outlets globally, including CNBC, Fox, Wall Street Journal, Forbes, Wired, Fortune, Financial Times, and many others. Ed, would you like to tell us a little bit about Learn or Die?
Thank you, Sean. Well, playing off Carmen's idea about in the belly of the beast, learn or die, in order to change the beast, the people that are in the beast have to change. And if you think about innovation is hard because all organizations are designed to produce standardized, reliable, predictable results. If you will, every business is designed to be anti-innovative. Well, if you look at us as individuals, innovation is very, very hard, because the science, and my book is about the science of learning, the science of human learning, and also the types of environment that enable learning, whether it's in an educational system or whether it's in a business. When you look at the science of how we learn, or whether we're innovative, it's not a pretty picture, all right? We basically are cognitively wired, if you will, not to process any information which disagrees with what we already believe. In order for us to be innovative, we have to be open-minded and be willing to change our mental models and our stories of the world. And that's very hard. And it's hard for many reasons. And it's also cognitively, and it's also hard emotionally, because ego inhibits innovation and fear inhibits innovation. We were raised in a school system where the concept of smart was quantitative. Smart people get the highest grade, and you get the highest grade by making the fewest mistakes. Well, in innovation, the research on innovations shows innovation is basically done through experiments. 95% of those experiments are going to fail. And so if you really want to be a good innovator, you got to be good at not knowing, good at learning from failure, and have learning resiliency. And why is innovation so important right now? Technology over the next 10 years through artificial intelligence and smart robots and cheap smart robots and smart machines and big data, I believe is going to completely transform the workplace. Every business of the future will be basically comprised of smart robots, smart machines, and humans. It'll differ by industry and business, the numbers. What will humans do? Humans are going to do what technology can't do. That's complex critical thinking, innovative thinking, creativity, and emotionally engaging with other humans. And what that means is, if I'm right, and I don't know whether I'll be right, I believe the probability is good. I didn't say the probability is certain or the probability is high. I believe it's good that what I'm saying is going to occur. If you think about it, critical thinking, innovative thinking are processes, but beneath those processes comes a whole bunch of soft stuff, which in the business world doesn't get a lot of importance or credence now. This concept of smart, instead of being how much you know, the concept is going to become new smart. You decouple what you believe from your ego, and you're constantly willing to stress test what you believe against new data, because the world is changing so fast. What we know today will not probably be in 2 to 3 years what is true. And the ability to continually adapt individually and organizationally. And so, if you will, every organization is going to need rebels at work, because rebels are change agents, because every organization is going to have to adapt in the world we're going into. The organizations that are going to win are those who adapt the best and the fastest. And what that means from an organizational viewpoint, strategy, finance, all the business concepts, they're still important. But what is going to grow in importance in every organization, since we know from the science of learning, it's very hard for me to critique my thinking. I'm sort of biased about my thinking, okay? And we also all have strong confirmation biases. It's also very hard for one individual to be innovative. The concept of the aha moment and the genius is very rare. How does innovation occur? By a diverse group of people coming together who have different mental models, and therefore they process different information in having a trusting relationship, and they collaborate. How many of you ever heard the word collaboration in the business world? Okay? It's been out there for years. Talked about a lot. Rarely done. Okay? Because most businesses, most people believe collaboration's a competition who wins, instead of really coming together to learn together and make meaning. So in this new world, what's important? Listening to others, being open-minded, relating with others and connecting, collaborating, managing one's thinking, emotional intelligence. You take those, if you will, capabilities and skills and match them with best practices of critical thinking, best practices of innovative thinking, best practices how you do experiments and how you learn from experiments, and then you create an organizational environment that enables learning, and then you have, if you will, a high-performance learning organization, which is what the book is about. So, that's what Learn or Die is about.
Terrific. Thank you, Ed. You have just gained a 4-minute dividend from Ed. He ended early.
Thank you, Ed.
So I'd like now to introduce Betsy Polk and Maggie Chotas. I'll introduce you individually. Betsy Polk is the co-author of Power Through Partnership, How Women Lead Better Together. She is a facilitator, mediator, and coach for the Mulberry Partners, the consulting firm she co-founded with Maggie Chotas in 2003. She lives in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, with her always entertaining family. Maggie Chotas is also the co-author, imagine that, of Power Through Partnership, How Women Lead Better Together. As a facilitator and leadership coach for the Mulberry Partners, Maggie is a former teacher and director for public and independent schools who currently resides in Durham with her family. Perhaps they're not as entertaining.
They're very highly entertaining.
So please, tell us a little bit about your work.
I'll start, and then Maggie will finish, and that's partnership. And Ed, you put it so well in terms of describing the power of collaboration. And Carmen, thank you for your words about being a rebel at work, because as you were talking, I was realizing that without even realizing it, we've been rebels at work in terms of just the idea of partnering and how unique that is in our work settings today. And thank you, Sean, for moderating. So Power Through Partnership starts with a question. Maggie and I had been working together for a few years. We started with a friendship. Our business started with a friendship. It turned into a business partnership. And then over the years, and as we wrote this book, we realized we were also developing what we called a partnership mindset, where we were going into not just our work together, but our work with pretty much everyone else with the mindset of how do we collaborate, how do we take the competition out of this and make this about collaboration and bringing forward our best strengths so that we can accomplish things, greater things together. So it's been quite an evolution. What led to the book was our realization that we were having so much, for lack of a better word, fun working together. We were getting ideas from each other, we were bouncing off ideas, things that would have been really hard alone. We found great satisfaction and great success in working together. Our consulting practice, the Mulberry Partners, was based on our values around things we had learned from our past experiences. Mine as a consultant, Maggie's as an educator, and our real interest in doing work that would matter to our clients, that wouldn't just get put up on a shelf as, okay, this is the intervention for today, and then tomorrow we're going to do something else, but would be sustained. So that was very important to us. It was something we were able to weave into our work, and it was something that led to a rich and engrossing practice. But we wondered, were we just lucky? Were we lucky because we were two good friends who happened to figure out how to work together? We know that's not always true, and we took steps to preserve the friendship at the core of the work. But maybe we figured out. Maybe we were lucky, and maybe this was just us. So we have a question, you reach out, you get it answered, and we started reaching out to other women working together to find out if they were realizing the same benefits that we were realizing. And we found that it was not that easy to find these women. They were really under the radar. We eventually found 125 of them. It took a while. Now they're coming out of the woodwork. It's great. Women are out there. We're working together, but it's not a top-of-the-mind way of work. These women are truly rebels at work, rebels who are working together. I'll ask each of you. I was going to ask you this, but now I found out that with the microphones, it's not as easy to elicit conversation with you, so I'll just throw it out there. When you think of men in partnership, a lot of examples come to mind. And as we started thinking of them, and when we asked this question of other people, they can think of many, many examples. And as one comes to mind, another, and another, and another, and another.
It starts with Ben and Jerry's and goes from there.
Dean
Google,
Martin
Snapchat.
and Jerry Lewis.
That's right. Right.
Weinstein Brothers.
It just goes and goes and goes. So you look up women, do a little Google search on women in partnership. Laverne and Shirley, beer bottlers, Cagney and Lacey, tough cops, Thelma and Louise.
Who drew off the cliff.
Off the cliff. And Laverne and Shirley, no, not Laverne, Lucy and Ethel, who aren't even working together. So one, none of these women are on the air anymore. Two of them are off of a cliff. When we talk with young audiences, they have no idea who we're talking about because these are shows that haven't even existed for a long time. And none of these women were in leadership together. None of them led together.
And none of them were alive.
None of them are.
I mean,
right.
except as characters.
Right, as characters, right. None of them are real people. So we realized men have been working together for a long time in highly visible partnerships. This is a way of working. And we wrote our book not so much to say that this is a way of work that just works for women, but to say women can really benefit from this way of work. And we want to raise this model above the radar because when we reached out to 125 women, we found that they were realizing the benefits that we were realizing, and that this was a way of work that really could make a difference in work and in life.
Right. So in thinking about partnership and knowing that there's so many benefits that come from partnership, and we've seen that from the male partners in terms of taking up more space, in terms of being a more united front, being more powerful. I mean, we keep thinking there's this amazing picture of the Twitter co-founders on the floor of the stock exchange with their IPO, and they just are large and in charge. They're there, and they're very, very strong. And so thinking about women, how women can have that same access to power in terms of taking up space, supporting each other, building each other's confidence so that they can, feel stronger, providing flexibility and support and backup. So there are these incredible benefits that are inherent in effective partnerships anyway. And then there are some extra benefits that we found that women can gain that can really enhance the life as well as the work. And when we talked with the partners we talked with, which ran the gamut from small business owners to creative partners who are either co-writers or co-painters or
Co-singers.
We talked to the Indigo Girls, for example, and other musical trios. And so from the creative realm to the small business realm to larger corporations, women co-founders who built corporations over time, like the co-founders behind Dream Dinners, which is a national franchise for preparing your own meals and bringing them home, or Kaplan Thaler, which is a large PR firm in New York. So the themes that were just clear coming from all these different conversations that with the co-partner, I can lead the work that I want to lead and have the life that I want to lead. So not only is there the creativity and the collaboration and the spark of conflict, which we talk a lot about in our book, about how to make the most of conflict and the creative elements that come through conflict once you stop being afraid of it and realize how to use it productively, whether it's for all these, for the women we talked with, that they were really able to lead their lives the way they wanted to also because of the flexibility that can be inherent in the partnership model. So our goal with our book has been really to spread the word about partnership as a model that can work really well with women. And one of the things that we have to do is kind of pull back on some of the myths that get in our way that we've heard from women. Like there might be this...
And that we've experienced ourselves, yeah.
And there might be this myth of I have to do it myself, this solo superwoman thing. I've got to be a rebel maybe, but I've got to do it alone. Nobody else is going to get this like I can. Nobody else can do this like I can do it. Pulling that back and say, actually, there's a little bit of truth there because we have a lot of pressure that we put on ourselves, that other people have put on us. But in partnership, you can take that and put it into effective impact. Or the myth of women can't handle conflict very well. We don't have a direct way of addressing issues that come up. And there might be this myth of a mean girls or, cat fights and this sort of thing. And what well, we all can learn how to handle conflict really well. There might be a kernel of truth in terms of the way women have been socialized for not dealing with conflict directly, but by learning how to work things through, as I said earlier, maximize the creative elements in conflict and focus on the ultimate goal that you're looking to achieve, the positive aspects of the collaboration can really come to a fore. So we've had great resonance with the audience that we've talked with. We were just in Papua New Guinea and Fiji last week, talking to women there as they're trying to develop their own empowerment and work together more effectively to lead the lives they want to lead there. And so we're thrilled to have partnership as a very viable model for women on the table. That's what we're here for.
Our goal is that women, as we said, there are a lot of women working together. Our goal is that they can stand on the floor as like the Twitter founders and say, we're working together to make this happen and to make it a point of above the radar strength versus a quieter, below the radar way of work. And as a model for many other women, whether it's within an organization or entrepreneurially.
Well, thank you very much. So I'd like to take the next little bit with some questions that I've been thinking about, and then we'll turn it over to the audience shortly. This is fascinating. There are so many interesting themes that have emerged just in your comments this morning that I think are common. And so let me pose a question. I'd really like to motivate a conversation among you all. Let me begin with this. So the theme of today is how we innovate, which of course leads to a broader question about how we create change, how we encourage creativity and generate our own creativity. What is the most significant constraint? Is it toward achieving innovation and creativity and change within organizations? Is it at the individual level? Be you a rebel or not? Is it at the interaction level, sort of between individuals? Or does it occur at the organizational level? Sort of, is it a function of structure? Is it people? Is it interactions? Is it structure or the organization itself?
It's all three.
Yeah.
It's all three. Organizationally, the environment has got to enable, if you will, innovation, which is basically learning. And that means culture, basically a systems approach. The culture has got to espouse the right beliefs and values. You've got to have the right processes. You've got to have the leadership role modeling it. And you've got to measure those behaviors and reward those behaviors. From an individual perspective, you've got to, Abraham Maslow, one of the fathers of humanistic psychology, said it so aptly. People will learn to the extent they're not crippled by fear, and to the extent they have, if you will, the courage to dare. And so you've got to get rid of the ego of gosh, I'm going to look dumb. People are not going to think I'm smart. And the fear of failure, and that's organizationally plus individually. So you've got to change people's mental model of failure. Failure is a learning opportunity.
Yeah.
End of story.
Right. It also strikes me that all those structures are made by people. So, I mean, at the heart of it all is the individual, right? And cultures are created by individuals who come together to create a culture. So if, what gets in the way of one person, what gets in the way of two, and what gets in the way of 200, they're all the same. We keep finding again and again, they're the same basic dynamics. They just get bigger and bigger as more and more people are involved.
So I have and I agree with both, and I'm not disagreeing at all, but I have this thing that I like to say, which is an answer to your question, which is that there's a worldwide conspiracy for the preservation of mediocrity. And we are all,
It's true.
one way or another,
true.
we are either unwilling conspirators, i.e. we know we're part of the conspiracy, but we feel like we have no choice, or we're unwitting, right? We don't realize it. And, whenever I mention this to someone, we play with the idea and we find more reasons for why that, why is mediocrity like a good outcome for so many in society? That's another topic altogether.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
Some of you touched upon the question of diversity. Now, there's a fair amount of scholarship out there that speaks to the importance of the diversity, the necessity in some cases of towards creating new ideas. You need this diversity of not just backgrounds, but attitudes, orientations, and the like. How does that play into the role of being a rebel, or perhaps establishing partnerships, or having organizations that learn? How do you, if we assume that diversity is important, how do you achieve it, and how do you embrace it and leverage it?
So if I can start on this one, because it's a passion for me, I really think we need to change the diversity conversation. And if we changed it, it would, I think, have better innovation outcomes. And we need to think about cognitive diversity. So how I look, my background, my ethnic heritage, my experiences contribute to the way I think. And they're all sort of like outward proxies for what's really important is diversity of thinkers at a table like this. And I think that, the book could have been titled People Who Think Differently at Work. Not as good a title, but it's really the same concept. Why are you a rebel? That's why I prefer the word heretic, because a heretic is someone who has a view other than the prevailing orthodoxy, right?
Well, and when we look at partners who have to have a very high level of trust in order to engage in conflict and in order to really work together towards reaching a vision and have to be able to advocate and really listen, that you were talking about before, that the trust is such a key thing. And so, and building the trust, whether it's within a two-person collaboration or a team or a larger organization, is an ongoing piece of work. So creating that atmosphere of safety for the differences of thinking to be on the table, and when you're actively working towards that, and people do feel safe to share different points of view or tell the way things seem like from their point of view, then you're able to really maximize the diversity, whatever the combination of it is.
I think that it's very hard to have an innovative organization without diversity. I think it's nigh impossible. So I think the question leads to another question: how, when I put people together who think differently because they have different experiences and different backgrounds, how do I make that coming together productive instead of 4 or 5 people feeling defensive when their views are challenged, and then getting fearful of looking bad, and then getting the big E, not Ed, ego involved. And the management, I've come to the position that if you want to talk about innovation or talk about learning, humility is the new killer app. That you can't be innovative or a good critical thinker unless you have humility, because you have to basically be willing, in order to be open-minded, to calm the self. And you are not your ideas. The ideas are subject to stress testing and et cetera.
So just to, if I may,
Please.
add to that, Ed, what you described, how do I get people with different opinions to be productive, is called diversity tension. And managers and employees, we don't know, none of us know how to deal with diversity tension very well. And you have diversity tension from sort of the legacy ways we think about diversity, but you definitely have diversity tension when people have different points of view, and that's one of the reasons why I hate the word consensus so much. I mean, I despise that word. because it really is a way of saying, oh no, these differences of opinion don't really matter. We're going to paper over it by finding the lowest common denominator.
Yeah. I call consensus a fancy word for dumbing down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you both have me thinking about the idea of this cognitive diversity and humility and how those two pieces go together. We found that the partners we talked with who worked well together, where it was really working, were able to take the competition between them, and instead of making that about their own, first they had to recognize the fact that we all have egos, and that's not something that's there's nothing wrong with that. But so they would take that ego energy between them and the competition between them, and instead of letting it get between them, they would raise it up and put it into whatever shared purpose they had, whether it was working together in an organization or collaborating to create something specifically. They put that stuff that gets in the way of people and put it up into what are we here to achieve together. And that cognitive diversity was so important because it was a recognition of you bring this piece of this thinking, I bring this piece of this thinking, together we're creating this, whatever this is, and let's make this happen so that we can both succeed, which requires a great amount of humility.
One of the reasons I find all your books so intriguing is that, and I'd like to return to a word that you used, Carmen, unorthodox. You also used the word heretics or heretical. As I've thought about that while we're speaking, I've thought, each of you in your own way, in a different context, are, forgive me for going with this, but apostles of unorthodoxy. And here's the question I have for all of you. Is particularly I'm reflecting on your title, Carmen. Rebels at Work, a handbook for leading change from within. You've talked about how these partnerships between women are so rare. It's hard to find them. It's a big struggle, even in your project. And Ed, this notion of really creating a true high-performing learning organization that is also rare and hard to do. Mm-hmm. These are all unorthodox ideas. So if you're the individual, we all are it's all up to us at the end. Yeah. At what point do we say, you know what, I can't make change from within? When do you say, this organization is not the place to affect these ideas? When do you stop being a rebel from within and go without?
Do you reinvest that into something else, or do you just give up?
That's my question.
Well, I guess mine would be. That's my question, or my strategy, I think.
Well, Carmen didn't give up. You were in the CIA for...
Well, I did give up for about 3 years. I had to. I no longer recognize the person that they were describing.
But then you went back.
Yes.
Right?
So I think you have to take a very carefully considered retreat. I know I had something brilliant to say about this, but it has escaped me. But so
well, you were talking about the importance of the self-care in
yes,
that, and
absolutely.
the description of when you are being described as someone who you don't recognize or don't want to be. That's
right.
an indication.
I don't think it's horrible for me to say his name, Kehan Krippendorf. It's a wonderful name. Who has written extensively on innovation, is working on a new project, and he talked to me about it, about being a rebel at work. And he said that he was writing the book for his wife, who works for a company and is an advocate of change. And people keep saying, well, why don't you just leave the company? It's almost like a mark of shame for her to stay in the company and struggle to change it. And I just thought that was such a lovely thought, in so many ways. And I think that, if all of us leave, organizations, at least for now, that's how we make the economy work. That's another topic. And I think, you've got to stay within it and help it become better. And I think that, if you just figure out when to retreat so that you avoid the complete burnout, then you can come back to fight again.
Okay. It's a very complex question, Sean, as the other panelists know. It depends. If the conflict is one of values. You're in an organization where your personal values and the values of the organization don't mesh, and you try to change the values, and you can't change the values, and those values are important to your life. That may call for you to leave. If you're trying to change the organization and say it's got good values and to some extent, and then it's rigid and doesn't want to be innovative, let's just hypothesize that can exist, okay? Then the question is I remember one of my early students when I left the business world and started teaching 12 years ago. We were talking about entrepreneurship, and very smart woman, and she says, what's the difference in an entrepreneur that sticks with it and makes it work? Therefore, what's the difference between persistence and stupidity? Okay? When are you getting the feedback from your environment that no matter what I do, I can't change the environment? And I believe every person has an innate desire to be all they can be and to flourish. If you're in an environment and the management team just will not change, how long do you fight? And I think that's a very personal question, and I don't think there's, one answer. But at some point, you have to look at yourself after you've rested and all this. Can I make the contribution and be all I can be here? And what's the feedback from the learning and the trying? Okay.
Right.
If you're not learning from, no matter what you do in this world today, if you're not learning continuously from feedback from your behavior and experiences and adapting and improving and adjusting, you're gonna flatline.
I don't think it's an accident that many of the women we talked with, including ourselves, were entrepreneurial and what we consider to be in creative partnerships. And one of the big themes was a theme that really hit us even more as we were writing the book and having it published, was that they carved out their own route to success, and they came together to share their definition of success. It typically wasn't a traditional notion of success, but it was what mattered to them based on their values and what they wanted to achieve. And I think that was their, my first response about the reinvestment, that was their opportunity to reinvest the energy they had for creating something and making something happen. It wasn't always working in where they had been, or even in past partnerships or other collaborations. So they found what they needed in each other and in other collaborators to come together to create this and to carve out what mattered to them in terms of a shared path for success.
Well, and some of the structures that we have with some of the women we talked with, I'm thinking of an attorney who loved the law, and she relished working in the law, but the way that the firms that she was working in were set up made it so, like, it was a question of the values, like the way that the way that she had to bill, the way she had to set up her relationship with her clients it really wasn't working for her. So what she decided to do was and she found another coworker who was a woman as well, and they went off and they established their own boutique law firm. They're not even in the same state, but they were able to take that passion that they have for the content of the law and then create a structure that really did work for them, because they felt like it wasn't just about the money, where they felt like the firms where they were so focused on bringing in, just lots and lots of money, which was fine, but they wanted more of a work-life integration. And so they were able to take that and start their own. So I think it is a complex question, and there's not one right answer to that. I mean, and I think, looking at who the individual is, what they're hoping to achieve in their lives, and then, for women in particular, and for men too, but from our point of view, really encouraging women to, imagine lots of possibilities and not get stuck in one way of thinking about what it means to be successful.
Great. Well, I'll pause here, and I'm going to turn to you for questions. I encourage you to ask questions of the entire panel or individuals. So, yes, sir.
Microphone?
He's coming.
Coming.
On its way.
Down in front.
This is for Carmen. The question is how being a rebel at work can be applied when you're looking at all-volunteer nonprofit organization. I was involved with one, still am, but a while ago, the prime directive seemed to be never do anything for the first time. And the two responses, two ideas seem to be, we've never done that before, so it's prima facie a bad idea, or we tried that once and it didn't work. The implicit response being, don't try it again. And so you don't have the carrots, you don't have the sticks, you don't necessarily have a formal management structure to get to know your boss, but presumably everybody's there for a common goal, a common interest, but sometimes that gets so entrenched that and fossilized, it's just hard to get things to go differently. In this organization, eventually the old ones aged out, and a new guard came in that was a little bit more flexible, but it was pretty tedious for a while when it was stuck.
Solves a lot of problems.
Stuck.
I don't know if you heard Ed, but he said death solves a lot of problems, which will very soon be a tweet. Which is what I've been doing, basically, that's all I've been doing on the phone, is sharing some of the great comments here. I mean, I welcome anybody else's comments. It's interesting that when I speak on Rebels at Work, or Lois and I speak, that always comes up. What do we do about boards? And I served on a board for a performing arts group for 10 years, and I know what you're talking about. I mean, I don't know I do know what was worse, dealing with all the problems at the CIA or going to the board meetings. Oh, my God. Then I got stuck being president. So I don't have an answer for that other than that I think boards have to diversify. And the idea that people remain on boards forever creates a real problem. And
Sometimes the old ones drive out the diversity. They'll
I-
claim they want diversity, and then they stamp it out when they see it.
I know that's true. I don't know, Ed, can you rescue me?
No, I'm not sure I can rescue you, but I'm going to join your brigade. At some point, you got to change the bylaws, so you maybe got away from and basically put term limits.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to structurally prevent fossilization.
And a consistent reminder of what the vision of the organization is and what the mission is and what the shared purpose for everyone being there is can make a simple yet big difference.
Another question. Yes, Rick. Wait for the mic, and towards the back.
Hi. First, thank you very much. I really enjoyed this so far. I'm fortunate enough to be here with my sister-in-law, Holly, and also my niece, Laurel. And I think this question is for all of you, but probably directed mostly toward Betsy and Maggie. You've talked so far about what do you do if you're a woman already in an organization? And Laurel is a really talented filmmaker. In high school, she made a movie about her grandfather that moved people to tears. She's out at USC. She's in her 4th year. She's 3,000 miles from home. She's a little bit shy. And she's about to go into a male-dominated industry where if she's true to herself, she's going to be a heretic walking in. So I'm not necessarily asking for career advice. My understanding is she's had a lot of that. But she's got a job. She's walking up the steps to the office for the very first day. And right before she walks in, she takes a deep breath. And what 3 things should she keep in mind as she walks through that door?
Partnership mindset is a key thing. You know, going into the position, looking for who you can collaborate with, and entering with that openness of mind, that I'm here to bring my skills, my passion, and I'm here to meet other people and help them unleash their skills and their passion, and I'm expecting that they're going to help me do that as well. So having that openness and even just having change, making sure your mindset is set that way, and valuing trusting yourself, what you bring into the situation, and really looking for who those allies are, who you can develop, even if it's not a formal partnership, but develop that informal collaboration where you're both you're all working towards helping each other succeed.
And you're going to be the new one, and you're going to be the young one, Laurel. So remembering that your way of having that partnership mindset in the beginning is to be as supportive as you can be, to be there to help others succeed, to be there to shine in that way as well as every other way. So thinking about the ego piece, it's to remember that you're there to bring out their success, and in turn, that's going to lead to yours. I think I just know that when I first entered the work world, I went in with my energy of, I'm going to set the world on fire. They're so lucky to have me right out of college or graduate school or whichever phase I was in. And realizing there was this big ego piece that I had to manage pretty well. And finding allies, and women and men, who I could support, who I could work with, who I found opportunities to help them shine, and I found that they would, in turn, once they were able to trust me and see that ego, that I was putting my ego into helping them, they were there for me. So it's about the allies. Good luck to you.
So two things I would add. Know your give-up line. So there's a little voice in your head that when bad stuff happens to you, it says nasty things to you in your head. My give-up line was, I just don't care anymore. And learn to recognize it, because that's when you're like getting a little bit out of control, and that's when you need to pause and take a deep breath. When things don't go the way you want them to go. And then I'm very much a fan of optimism. Optimism is the greatest form of rebellion, particularly today in the lives that in the world that we're leading. The people who actually believe there is a solution and there is a way achieve a lot more than the Eeyores. So just remain optimistic.
Yes, see everything as an opportunity.
Great, thank you. Yes, towards the back in the purple. Okay, great.
This is a question from Eeyore.
From Eeyore.
An Eeyore.
One of the many of the points that you've made about innovation rest on the idea of collaboration, and which requires a lot of emotional skills in terms of interacting with people. And what my concern is that with the innovation of all these electronic devices that people are using, and what I hear about younger people, how they use it, and what I observe, it seems to me that people are focused on their devices and communicate with one another indirectly as opposed to in person, and therefore are not maybe developing the kinds of skills it takes to effectively interact and collaborate with other people.
Well, I guess I'll talk first, since
But she's got to send a tweet first.
I got to send a tweet first. Yes, I think that you can make that argument. I think that a lot of social networking is actually a broadcasting capability that we've never had before. So building innovation is, this was actually one of the talks I heard at South by Southwest, and I can't remember who said it, sadly, to give him credit or her credit, but innovation is, first, it's one-to-one. It was Dory Clark, who writes for Forbes. First, when you're trying to get a new idea, it's one-to-one. Then it's one-to-many, and then it's many-to-many. And these platforms which I have been fascinated with from their inception, are really a way of democratizing access to people. I agree with you that some people use it as a substitute for interpersonal relationships. But before there were these devices, we had the problem of email in the workplace, where people are sending each other emails, even though they're like sitting 5 steps apart. So anyway, those are my comments.
Your comment made me think of one of my first clients was a communication company. This is before devices, right around at email prime time, and it was the same thing where they said, we just don't know how to communicate. They were a communications company. They didn't know how to communicate because they were sending each other, this guy would be in this cubicle here and she being in this cubicle there, and they would be sending each other emails instead of talking. And our big, powerful intervention was to have a pizza party, to have lunch and sit down together and have a conversation, and they thought that was pretty revolutionary. And they did, and it made a big difference, just sitting down. And now it would be sitting down and leaving the devices somewhere else for just a little while, and then go back, because Carmen's right.
I'm not sure it's that much value add, so it may be my mini ad here at the end. Yes, I can resonate with that. I have 2 young granddaughters. Both will sit in the room when we're together and have a conversation between each other, texting. And then when I get into the conversation, the youngest will go get my iPhone and bring it in and say, now, Poppy, you can text. And I'm sitting there saying, we're all looking at each other. Why in the world can't we talk? And, and the answer is, Poppy, we don't talk, we text. So it may be when that generation gets into the power structure, a lot of what we think is needed today may change. But I think the other thing is that it's very important in our school system, okay, and a lot of schools are doing this. Emotional intelligence is so mission critical in everything we're talking about, because change in most cases comes about with and through other people and being able to connect and relate. And, using Sheryl Sandberg's title, and it's in being very gender specific, she believes women need to lean in. I believe men need to lean out.
Wow.
And then we will have more collaboration.
There's been a question.
Yeah,
Here.
please.
That's another good tweet.
Wow. That'd be a big book. Lean out.
So, for Betsy and Maggie, I am a part of a woman partnership of 2 women that graduated from Darden and founded our business together, and that works really well for us. And we teach a lot of things. One of them is about having balance, so we're great fans of balance. But I'd like to know your reactions to the fact, I've read a lot of reviews of your book, and people certainly, your reviewers really connect with the balance equation of your content. And my business partner and I always look at those and go, yeah, we don't get up in the morning and say, oh, look at the balance, that we're doing this for balance.
Right.
And so I'm a little concerned, and I'd like to hear your voice around the content, the intellect. I mean, my business partner is the most intelligent person I think ever graduated from Darden. I didn't pick her for balance. I picked her for her brilliance. And so I'm troubled by the direction that a lot of the reviews have around it's all about balance, which I'm a fan of. And so I just love your reactions to what's the intellect, the content, and that piece of it.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up. That is something that it's certainly, we've never seen ourselves, for example, working any less hard. Because, I mean, like at one point somebody said, well, it's like you have a job share. And we said, no, it's not really like we have a job share, because we're both working at full tilt. And the reason that we wanted to investigate about how the partnership was working for other women was because of the results of the collaboration in terms of the, crystallizing our thinking, having to work through different points of view. We have, very different approaches to problem solving and different ideas about how to approach things, the complementary skills that we bring to the table, the networks that we can bring together when we joined our business. I mean, we never went into our co-founding our business thinking, oh, this is like a lifestyle business for us. That was never what we were thinking. Flexibility is a key outcome of the partnership, but that's flexibility in all sorts of ways. I mean, it's flexibilities in terms of a dynamic in a meeting, you know, when one person can observe while the other person is moving forward, or one person can, you know, back up what the other person said if the client doesn't pick up on it in the same way. So, I mean, it's flexibility
Or one
in a
person
lot
can
of
think of the
different ways.
answer to the question while the other one's still thinking.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Which men have been enjoying since time began.
Right,
That's
right.
That's the beauty of their partnerships.
Right.
And it's been working out wonderfully. And so I, you know, and I'm very happy for them. Do you know what I mean? Like,
That's
I
right.
never want it to be that either kind are bad, but we need more of all of them. And
Yeah.
so I'm curious about how you feel about so much of the reaction to it being through the lens of balance.
Yeah, well, your questions make me think of this. It's not exactly a response to it, though. But, you know, we talked about, Maggie mentioned the Twitter founder's example of standing on the stock floor and, you know, really standing largely and really embracing their partnership. I mean, these men are known as partners. There's no secret. Ben and Jerry, you can't say Ben without saying Jerry, you know. Even though they're not even partners anymore, right? But they're just so connected and there's no power that's lost in that. There's power gained from that collaboration. So we found early on that there was some resistance to this idea, well, are you saying that women can't do this by themselves? Are you saying that women need a partner because they can't do this by themselves? And that was just such an interesting question for us, and it took a while to get to this idea of why is it that when men are working together, there's this power claimed, and there's an assumption when women are working together that it's because they need each other for balance or they need each other to fill in the blanks for each other. So we want this to be about, yeah, men have been doing this since time began, and women have been doing this, and now let's make this above the radar, and let's make this a model for you when you go into your new work world, Laurel. And let's say this makes us, we're powerful to begin with, and this makes us even more powerful.
We may have time for one more question. Going once. Yes, right in front, close to front.
This is for Edward Hess. How does one measure the yardsticks, or what kind of yardsticks would you have to determine whether or not your organization has succeeded with some of your ideas, and how would that relate to shareholder concerns if it is a public company?
Sure. Good question. Ultimately, if you're a public company, or ultimately if you're any company, all right, you've got to produce results, else you're not going to stay in business. You're not going to keep your customers. And the concept of grow or die, there's no science behind it, but the concept of improve or die, constantly improve, there is a lot of science behind it. So, you do the standard financial metrics, what's happening, but you've got to tie your learning processes into what your business objective and strategy is. The type of processes you put in fact, the type of culture. And I just spent 4 days last week in Washington, D.C. with a public company, basically designing with them, co-creating with 13 senior executives, a learning system. So where do we start? They got a culture, they got values, whatever. No, let's go back to basics. Let's write your beliefs. What you believe about the role of business. Is it just to produce shareholder value, or is it to basically provide, if you will, meaning to employees, value to customers, contribute to society? Let's go through your basic beliefs. Then let's define, if you will, talk about what your strategy is. What behaviors do you need to drive to get to there? Once I get to behaviors, I then start talking about culture. Once I get to behaviors, I'll start measuring behaviors. And the research basically shows that if I basically design the right system and measure the right behaviors, I'll get the financial results. So you measure behaviors much more than you measure widgets in the beginning, because you're looking for learning behaviors. 360-degree reviews, a lot, but also specific behaviors, okay? That number of experiments, number of ideas. Does someone seek out stress testing their views? Is someone open to having their views challenged, even if they don't seek it out?
So if I could make a suggestion, how about, you were talking about failure earlier. How about for senior executives, having, as part of their evaluation, they talk about the most interesting failure they had during the year and what they learned from it.
Right, and
Outstanding, outstanding
Yeah.
point, outstanding.
Yeah.
Because you're saying, I'm the top dog,
Right.
and I can talk
model
openly
that.
about failure, I fail.
Yeah.
The best learning organization that I found in my research, the founder and the chairman has as one of the basic concepts, I fail every day all over the place. What's important is whether I bounce back and learn and improve.
That seems like a great point on which to end. Thank you. Maggie, Betsy, Ed, Carmen, thank you very much for Thank you very much for